Hey, everybody, welcome back. Welcome back. The ups and downs of the author journey is best managed by being in a community of authors who can help you find your way. Left to figure it out on your own can feel overwhelming, exhausting, and frankly, lonely. If you need help, the Biz Book Publishing Hub has more than 50 experts ready to assist entrepreneurs in becoming successful authors. Check out this free resource at bizbookpublishinghub.com. Building an author community is one of the reasons I'm so excited to be interviewing authors about the lessons they learned along the way. Listen to this panel discussion to learn a nugget or two that help you more confidently move from writing to editing to publishing to marketing your business book. These authors participated in one of my Kindle cross promotion campaigns, in which business authors lowered their Kindle book prices to 99 cents. I organize these twice a year around Amazon Prime Days and Black Friday. Dozens of authors work collaboratively to spread the word and boost book sales. It's been a great way to generate interest in evergreen books that were published many years earlier and celebrate those recent publications. The best part is our collaboration didn't end when the campaign was over. Nearly every author opted to sign up for an author panel after the event. With me today are three authors. Anne Bartolucci, sorry, read it and I did it wrong.
That's okay.
I'm going to fix this in post.
Okay.
With me today are three authors. Anna Bartolucci wrote Better Sleep for the Overachiever, a guide to creating a lifelong habit of healthy, rejuvenating slumber patterns to help you perform at your peak. Bill Soroka is the author of 6 books, 5 of which reached #1 bestseller in at least one category during the last Kindle cross-promotion campaign, including his latest, Your Passport to Apostille, 116 tips to build a thriving business as an apostille agent. Now, Geoffrey Klein is going to join us in a little bit. He wrote The Content Beast, a perfect guide for anyone who wants to learn about using story-driven content for effective content marketing. So to kick us off, Anna, will you share with us, who did you write your book for? Who was your sort of target reader when you were writing this?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I have been in private practice for now over 15 years, treating predominantly insomnia patients. So I help people sleep without drugs. It's mostly what I do for my day job. I actually know you because I'm working on a side gig as well. And I noticed during that time that I was getting this certain, I guess we call it avatar in the marketing world of people. And they were very high achievers, very highly motivated, very highly driven, had a hard time shutting off their minds at night. And, they had read all of the typical advice about how to get better sleep, but there was still something missing. And so I wrote Better Sleep for the Overachiever for those people, for those, some of them are type A personalities, some of them are not, but just very highly driven people who just really have a hard time shutting down. And I mean, I admit that I am one of those people as well. So I talk about some of my things that I've experienced in the book, including my own, failures and challenges. And interestingly, that was before I was diagnosed with ADHD. And apparently, the book is really good for neuroatypical people as well.
Wow, awesome. Thank you for sharing all that. I actually joke all the time I have trouble sleeping as like the problem that a lot of people can complain about, but it's not enough information to really help diagnose like the causes to that. And
Mhm.
so I like that you sort of narrowed in on these are like high achieving, busy people who just need new processes, and it might also have something to do with the way they're thinking and relating to the
Mhm.
world. And so I love that you're niching down to a really particular audience who's going to resonate with that. Bill also has quite the niche in the work that he does. Bill, share a little bit about why you write all these books. Like, who's your audience for them?
Yeah, thank you. Pleasure to be here as well. So, my niche audience is mainly mobile notaries and loan signing agents, trust delivery agents for estate planning documents. And the latest book is for apostille agents, because who knew that there is this whole world of international document authentication and a rewarding career. If you like to nerd out on paperwork, if you're looking for a side hustle, if you're looking for a full-time gig, that's totally self-employed. That's who we wrote this book for. I've loved this business as a mobile notary. It found me at just the right time, and I love to share it with people. So that's why I write.
Apostille. Yes. It's is it a French word? It feels like not a word that is common in our language.
It's not, I had never heard of it until I met the queen of apostilles, Judy Lawrence. Yeah, it's a French word meaning certification or certificate.
You know what I love is that you're doing all this work that is largely hidden from view. The only time us, everyday people have a need for notary is usually big moments like buying a house and you stand there and they flip the pages and have you sign each one, right? But like there is so much more to this business, and I love that you're giving people access to learn about that. And also, for anyone who is looking for a new side hustle or to add a new revenue stream to an existing business, you give them a lot of hope that there's a way to build that. So I'm really a big fan of the process that you've created. Bill, back to you again. When you're thinking about your books, I always talk about, making sure the book has a successful launch. But what does that even mean? Like, what is your definition of success? And has it changed from the first book to this latest one?
Yeah, great question. Again, I love this topic. So the first part of your question, you talked about what does a launch look like? Why is that so important? And when I first started my first book, it's called Sign and Thrive. When we first launched that, I was fortunate enough that I invested in a course, a program. I think I was even in with you in one of those programs, and I read lots of books on it. So I figured out that there's something more than just hitting publish. And I'm glad I did that because it was worth every penny of investment. And I'm hoping that we can talk real numbers as part of this conversation too, because I invested heavy. And that's one of the great lessons in business I had. I probably invested with the course and the books and everything like several $1,000s on it. But the return on that investment has been huge and worth every penny. So I figured out how important it was to have things like a launch team, to have clear and specific directions for that launch team and how they're going to help you, and why reviews make such a huge difference during that launch, and why having things like lead magnets and additional resources for your readers so you can capture email addresses, because these platforms don't share their customers with you, right? You got to figure out a way to do that. So all of that I learned.
What was the goal? Were you checking book sales, review count? Like how many people are on your launch team? Like, how did you know then and now that you were moving towards what you thought of as a successful goal?
So I started out kind of the standards, right? I wanted a bestseller banner. I wanted book sales. So I became kind of obsessive there in the beginning. Just how many books did I sell on those first few days? There was how many reviews I was getting, all of those things that I thought mattered at the time, and they certainly did. And it was so worth it to put so much energy into getting those kind of the metrics that most authors consider a success.
I'm messaging with our friend who was not able to be here on time to see whether he can join us when he's back at his home. He's offering to join by phone, and might be a little distracting, and I want to make sure he's got good audio. So Will, jumping over here to Anna, again, you've got this book that came out. When you were writing it, you had a particular idea of success probably in mind. I'm always curious, and this is like the first book for you. What did you look towards? What were the metrics you were paying attention to when you were thinking, oh, okay, if the book does this, I'll know it was a big success?
Well, I have to admit that because of the timing of the release of this book, I did not go through a traditional launch at all. I finished this book, got it formatted and everything in spring of 2020, which, as we all know, the world's changed a bit. And I was up to my eyeballs and over with clients in my practice. I had to make a huge pivot going from mostly in-person sessions to virtual sessions. I had signed a 5-year commercial lease in February of 2020. Yeah, Gotta love that timing. For office I couldn't see patients in for a year, although it was nice to have a place to go. And so when it came to Better Sleep for the Overachiever, it was my second nonfiction book. My first was Business Basics for Private Practice Guide for Mental Health Professionals, which came out in 2017 with Routledge. I had planned a launch, but it was just basic survival mode at that point. And it was like, okay, I got to get this thing out so that my referral sources have something that they can give to their patients as a resource while they're waiting to get in with me or one of my colleagues. And so my measure of success turned out to be how many patients appeared on camera with a copy of my book in hand with little sticky notes on the side with all of the things that had resonated with them. And so it wasn't a monetary goal at all. It was, is this book going to help people? And so far it has. I mean, I did try to get some early reviews by sending it out to colleagues, and I got a few, but yeah, not nearly as many as I'd hoped. But I do know that it resonated with and helped people.
I love that the end result is people were coming to you because of the book, which ultimately is really the purpose of having a book, if it's a book about growing your business. And you learned a lot of lessons, I'm guessing, from the first book you published to this one. But then your plans were disrupted because life all over the world was disrupted, and we couldn't get people's attention in that time period to do like a formal launch piece. We connected most recently because of the Kindle cross promotion. Are you doing other activities like that to keep getting visibility on this book?
Yes. So I am primarily a fiction author. I've written 17 novels, 4 novellas. Well, those are what's published. I've written more. And so I'm fairly familiar with the book launch and marketing practice. And if anybody's watching on video, they are seeing how bored my feline supervisor is by this conversation. And so I participate in author newsletter swaps. I do book funnel promos. Apparently my VA just signed me up for another book funnel promo for Better Sleep for the Overachiever. I do Amazon ads. So I do have some visibility things going still.
Yeah. And Bill, what's changed for you over time from that first book to the sixth book regarding, the number of, like, whether it's review count you're shooting for or book sales you were shooting for or launch team active members? Like, has something changed? Like, now you have so much more knowledge about the effort that goes in. It wasn't just the money you spent up front. You also learned about a lot of problems that you didn't even know were problems. And then you came up with new ways of kind of combating those problems. And so how has your thinking evolved regarding the success of a book from the beginning of your journey as an author to today?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. I would say for me, it's more about creating a great piece of work that is going to last and stand through time. And it really helps get me clear on what I'm going to write about and what I'm not going to write about. Because I have tons of ideas, so I have to filter those out based on, and I love the idea of the perennial seller, something that's just going to last through the ages. So that tends to be my focus now. I want I want to feel proud of the work that I do. I want people to read the book and think, holy cow, this thing is packed full of value. I can't believe he told us all of this in a book. And knowing that that's going to last and help generations, in my case, of notaries or apostille agents, gives me that intrinsic.
How do you measure that, though?
Yeah, it's tough, right? But it feels good. And it's interesting. So my whole writing process has changed for this, right? Like, it used to be very siloed from the first book and scheduling time to do it. And now it's very regimented process. And I write with co-authors a lot, and I'll drive them crazy because they're like, it's ready. It's ready. It's perfect. And I'm like, no, it's not. So I'll go through 9 months of revisions, writings, rewritings, going through it. And just, there's a magical moment when you're writing a book where I call it coming alive. It comes alive off the paper. And when that moment happens, I know I'm close. But it takes a long time sometimes.
Okay, so that magical moment for me is when I'm sick of the book. It's quite the opposite of feeling of what you just described. I get to this point where I've gone over the book, 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 right? I have all the feedback. I'm working with the editor. I'm doing another read out loud. And I remember this happened in my first book. I had to read it out loud 3 times. I've since started using Speechify, which is an app and a plugin on Chrome. So while I was writing, I was using Speechify to listen to each section. That helped my writing a tremendous amount. But I didn't have that the first book, and I was reading out loud like in 1 week 3 times. Yeah, I reached the point where I was like, okay, I'm so done with this book. It's ready. And do I have to talk about this book now? Because I don't know if I want to. Like I was like, that's how I knew this book was ready to ship. But then you get excited about it again, because once it goes out into the world, and particularly the process I use for launches, we collect reviews in advance before the book's been published from the launch team members who are prospects and likely referral partners. And those early reviews that come in, it reignites something for me. And I've seen this happen for the authors that I've supported through this process, because those early reviews really tell you that it is a great book. It is a great value. Those are the people who are really there to say, like you said, Bill, wow, I can't believe you gave this all away. And I think that is what propels me and my authors forward to the rest of the marketing part. Anna, what would you like to share about this sort of process? Has anything come up for you now that you've heard a little bit from Bill?
Sure. And I agree that, yeah, it's so important to think about, okay, how is this going to impact people long term? And I think about with both my fiction and my nonfiction. And one of the things that I do tell my writing coaching clients is that at some point in the process, you are going to hate not just this book, but every single thing you have ever written. And that is why it is so important to have this external support, like you have with the Pub Hub, or that those of us with writing communities provide. As for when the book is ready, at this point, I'm lucky that I do most of my work internally, so I just require a couple of drafts before it goes to my editor. I'm also a very clean writer, a very fast writer, and so I don't do a lot of waffling at the end. I don't do a lot of extra revision. I'll maybe run it through something like per writing aid just to catch the things that you don't see, like repeated words too close together. And I know that's what you do when you're reading aloud as well. But yeah, at that point, I'm just super excited to get it out into the world. And yes, I've had advance reviews. I've had other feedback that, okay, yes, it is time. And I also, I'm a psychologist, and I preach all the time that perfectionism is just going to get in your way in the end. So just let it go. Appreciate good enough.
That's actually really a good point, that often people they write like whole books and then don't release them because of that concern that something's missing. I want to welcome Geoffrey Klein. Geoffrey, thanks for joining us. I introduced you a little bit formally a moment ago, but I wanted to just bring you into the conversation and ask you, who'd you write your book for? So if you can share a little bit about who's the audience for that book, who was in your mind when you were writing your book? Content beast. Go ahead and unmute before you. There we go.
Hey, sorry. 1,000 apologies for my tardiness. I blame no one because I take responsibility for myself. My book was written for people who don't have a marketing department but have to create content. So it was written. The secondary is people who have to do their job is to create content, but it was more for people who are like, oh yeah, I really should be more consistent about posting, or I should be more consistent about blogging, or whatever it was. And it was really about trying to share the importance of creating relevant, valuable content in a more systematic way. Why and who and how to do it.
So Geoffrey, your book came out just about 6-8 months ago, something like that. So it's fairly recent. Did you have a particular metric of success when it first came out? Was it like sales or reviews or gigs? Like what was the goal initially before you really knew what you were in for? What was your initial goal when you were starting with the
Well,
book?
probably because of my conversations with you, my goal was to get 50 reviews. That was the real metric I was trying to hit. I wrote the book less about selling lots of copies of the book, so much as it being a calling card for me as a speaker, and for my thought leadership. as well as wanting the book to be useful for people. So that, we all, I think, I think most authors start with, well, I want to write something that people want to read. And then you want that to hopefully expand your area of expertise and your ability to do that for more people. But I was I tried to be very systematic about giving people the framework to help them help me. So asking well before I needed it, asking them to write it before the book even was launched, giving them advanced copies, things like that, so that I would have, on day one, I would have a few reviews would start coming in the first couple of weeks pretty regularly because I
Yeah, and
was,
you did a great job, Jeffrey. I know we talked a
thanks.
bit about this as you were getting ready. You have 82 ratings, 4.4 out of 5, and 53 written reviews. So you met your 50 plus
Yes.
written reviews goal. And to me, that shows a lot of effort because I know that that's not easy to do. And as you said, you sort of spaced it out. And I actually wanted to get into reviews next. So good timing that you jumped in. So Anna, with your books, I know that your second book got all disrupted and you made your way through getting reviews. I mean, you did get 20 plus reviews. So, I mean, that didn't happen accidentally. How do you go about that? Like, what was your process for finding the right people to write those reviews? And then how did you get them to actually do it? Because that's hard.
Okay, well, first I begged on Facebook with because I'm friends with a lot of my colleagues, and also there's some people from high school who have gone on into medical and other healing fields. It's like, hey, who wants a free copy? And I also listed my book on Booksprout, which I have a membership to, which is an online review site. That got me a few more. And since then, it's been pretty much like organic reviews. If somebody has read it and has told me how much they love it, I'm like, hey, would you please leave a review? That would be awesome. And including, in person at conferences where some of my colleagues had read my book because they wanted it to help them. And so, yeah, it's been sort of I won't say haphazard, but it's definitely not the super planned process that you do. So, I'm learning.
Yeah, I mean, this is an area I've now met with, I don't know, 60, 70 people in the publishing, marketing, book world. Because I was trying to initially figure out whether my launch process was unique and whether a referral network existed that I could join. And in the end, I created the BizBook Publishing Hub because the network didn't exist, but everyone wanted to join it. So I was like, okay, then that was good news. And I have yet to meet someone who does my process. My process is fairly involved and hyper personalized. And even with all that, it doesn't always get. I mean, the numbers are amazing. Like with all the effort, you still can only get like 30% reviews by a specific date. Although I had a client last month who got 50%. She had 131 people on her launch team and 65 written reviews by her launch date, and 55 were on Amazon and 10 couldn't go on Amazon, but because she had collected them in advance, she guided them through, oh, you want to do it on Goodreads? You want to write a LinkedIn recommendation? Can I make it into a social media graphic? Do you want to post it on social media? May I tag you? And so those other 10 still got used. And that means 65 people sort of took that action in that time period. And then even more have come in since. So she had a great out of the gate launch. Bill, coming back to you, you've had some tremendous success and built large launch teams. You have an amazing community that you are beloved in. But I also know that even though people, I mean, we've talked about this, like even if people like you and like the book, doesn't mean they write a review. So all those listening who read books, I think you're getting the message. You should be writing more reviews. Bill, what would you say is your process for getting folks sort of into this like launch experience and then writing the reviews for you?
Yeah. Well, first, I would recommend that you just leverage all your resources and your audiences. So I happen to have a real solid and active email database. I have great social media content. So use those to draw people in and get them excited about the book and what the transformation the book can provide. I think that's really important to talk about too. It's not just about reading a book. It's about, hey, when you start reading the book, you're this way, and you might have these kind of results or be this kind of person at the end of the book. So I try to get people excited about that. I don't put limits on the launch team either. I remember some people saying cap it off at 100, but if 300 wanted to sign up, which they usually do, I have usually about 300 that will sign up for my launch team. And that makes people nervous because they get a free PDF of the book. So that's 300 free books out there. But it's always seems to have worked just fine. And it helps get that momentum going, because if only 30% of 300 people do what they're supposed to do, then I still have pretty good results, right? Doesn't always work out that way still, but I use email automation so I don't have to consciously think, okay, I got to send them an email now. I got to send them an email now. I just set up an email sequence that when they register for the launch team, they get certain automated reminders that just gently nudges them. And one thing, Robbie, I learn from your emails all the time too, is you're super specific. So I make it super specific for what I need from them. And then I try to make it as easy as possible with direct links, sample content. Here's what you can do, that kind of thing.
I'd actually love offline to share our numbers, percentages, and see like if your process, like if my process really is that much better because it's so much more detailed. I'm using a malmerge tool called Yet Another Malmerge, YAMM.com, and it merges between a Gmail email draft and a Google spreadsheet on Google Drive. There's also a way to do this with Outlook, Microsoft Outlook, and Microsoft Excel, but you basically have a list of names and emails and all that, and then you have the list of the email. And what I'm doing is everyone's not getting the same email, because if Anna already wrote the review and submitted the form, but you haven't, Bill, then Anna doesn't hear from me that next email, but Bill gets a little like, hey. And it also, I often set him up to be replies to the last message, because I really want it to seem like it's a message between me and it is a message between me and you, because I'm hand picking who gets it each time and then going through and then filtering to send the message out. So it is a bit of effort, but I know that if you just ask people to write a review, like join my lunch and write a review, and you don't do a lot of extra effort, the number goes down to about 10% who actually do it. Which is really sad when most people probably only get like 25, 40 people on a launch team. Like that's probably a good average for most people. They're not building big teams. And then they wonder why they have less than 10 reviews. It's like they didn't really start out with a big list and they didn't do that nurture sequence. And whether it's automated, which at least gets it back in front of people, or hyper specific and personalized, at least we have to guide people through. The thing that people forget is that this is only really important to the author, like not still the people on the team. Hey, Geoffrey, you have had success. We were just talking about your 53 written reviews, 82 ratings. I want to clarify why for people who are listening and wondering, like, what do I mean? What's the difference? People can put a star rating 1 through 5 without writing anything. That's something Amazon allowed to happen in the last few years. And it just means that people can come in and leave a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5-star rating. And that's all they've done. It's a lot easier to get those than it is to get people to write something. So Geoffrey, how did you talk a little bit about this? It sounds like you cribbed off my notes a little bit, because you and I had lots of conversations. So to share why it worked, and we can sort of maybe pull from your experience how you approach that.
Well, first, I will give Robbie due credit, because he, at the right amount of time when he was starting to kind of craft what he was doing to help people, I was picking his brain quite
We have
vigorously.
to sit next to each other at a meeting.
I'm like, but it was about having a process, and I think that's the thing. There's the difference between kind of trying something and like haphazard, and like I had a spreadsheet of the people I was gonna contact. What date did I contact them? Did they get back in touch with me? Here's the next date for the follow-up. And once they had agreed, they went to a different list. And so now I said, you've agreed. And I had fairly detailed emails of what exactly and specifically they needed to do when. And I started early. And that, I think, helped a lot, because I was requesting them to send me the review in the next 3 weeks or a month or whatever it was, which was a month before my book was going to officially launch. So I probably knew I had 40 reviews ready to go before launch date. And I think that, and then, it's about persistence. So, reminders and, those kinds of things, nudges and things. And these are all people that I mostly know pretty well that, and you get, that numbers. So I haven't looked at the actual numbers of people I've asked versus people. I want to say it was something like I must have asked close to 300 people, something like that, if I had to guess. And some, people are human, and some people are, yes, I'm all in and do it right away. And I also did something. Jeff Gibbard, who we both know, who's an author, he did something that I think helped a lot, which was he basically created a cheat sheet for reviewing. And I'm sure Robbie, I don't know if Robbie did this before him or not, but so that when I sent someone the book, I also sent them a document that said, what's this book about? Who's this book for? What makes a good review? Here's a sample review. So that I tried to help them, because, if you don't write reviews normally, you're like, oh, I don't even know where to begin. And I think that helped a lot, to have people, here are the main points of my book that you could talk about. So if you're going to be like, oh, I love the idea of infobase. So it really helped them not only write reviews, but write better reviews, so that less generic, like, oh, this was the greatest book, and I think giving people like, hey, you're probably looking for something to do. Here's some ideas for how you can write a review both better and easier for them. I mean, I think that's the end, as you said, it only matters to us. So to get someone to actually put in that effort is a lot. And so you have to really, I think, help them as much as you can.
Let's talk for a moment about what is a good review, because there's a good review for how it will help prospective readers decide whether or not to buy your book.
Right.
There's also a good review because the person who wrote the review is an ideal prospect or referral partner for the work that you do. And so it's engaging you in a conversation with them that will possibly create the pipeline to future work. So both those things need to be true. And we want to be building a launch team with the right people and then nurture them through. In all of my books, I have a little section in the back of the book that says a request, and it talks about writing reviews. And I have 3 prompts. What is your most valuable takeaway or insight? What have you done differently, or what will you do differently because you read this book? And who would benefit from reading this book? Seriously, just 2 or 3 sentences would be amazing. Your feedback helps to get this book into the hands of those who need it most. And then, that is also the messaging I'm putting into the launch team. I think just guiding people and demystifying the process, because it's scary if you just get sent to this empty white box and you don't know what to write. Hey, Anna, besides reviews, and I really got to acknowledge the timing of your launch being spring of 2020. What was challenging? I mean, you just said earlier that the writing process is not as hard for you. Like you're a prolific writer, fiction, and now you have 2 nonfiction books. What was challenging? Like, what's the challenge in all of this for you? Or are you now at the point where you've just done it enough? It's just a matter of executing.
Yeah, great question. So the big difference between fiction and nonfiction, and the reason I have 20 plus fiction and 2 nonfiction out, is that when you write nonfiction, and I write under a pen name, when you write nonfiction, you're writing it as you, and you're putting yourself out there. And so it was very interesting as I was writing about these different topics in the book, like imposter syndrome, perfectionism, procrastination, fear of failure. I went through all of them in the book as well. So I can say I've been through it, been around that writer's block several times now. So that was probably the hardest part of the nonfiction. And for some reason, Business Basics for Private Practice wasn't quite as bad. Maybe because it has such a smaller audience. I think also, maybe not Bill, because you've got a very niche audience, but Geoffrey, you're also writing in an area where there is a lot of material out there. And so the challenge is differentiating the book from, okay, what is already out there? No, this is not another dumbed down cognitive behavioral treatment for insomnia book. This is different. This is how it's different. This is, okay, let's look at what happens during the day that affects you at night and what causes that chronic anxiety that might be affecting your sleep. And so it's really thinking about marketing, positioning, also thinking about, okay, who are my comp titles? Maybe not quite as, super close, because I'm definitely falling in the middle of the sleep books and the general psychology books. So placement is also an interesting thing, especially with, Amazon deciding to mash up their categories every once in a while.
Yes. No, I think the idea that you look to see what else is out there. I often have prospective launch clients, like people who might be working with me on their launch. So their book's in process, close to done usually. And they say there's no book out there like this. And I do a quick search and I find 2 or 3 titles because they were very narrowly defining what their work was. And like there's like a adjacent keyword kind of thing. Or sometimes I actually know people who've written on their topic. Now, again, they're different writers. They have different points of view, different worlds that they live in. So maybe they're not exactly the same, but we should know, because the layperson, me, I don't know the difference until I hear from you what that difference is. So that's such a valid point to understand that the challenging piece about that. And if you're planning on having your book be in libraries or bookstores, physical bookstores, getting those categories right is important for that as well, and having that in the back of the book so that they can be properly shelved. So very valid point. Yeah, Anna.
And I would also add that that is definitely something that I start when I bring on a new writing coaching client. Looking at comp titles is one of the very first things that we do, not just to see what's out there, but then to see what the structure of the book is, because then you're going to be meeting reader expectations and they're more likely to pick it up.
We should mention that you're one of our founding BizBook Hub partners. So when we'll put the link directly to your profile on the bizbookpublishinghub.com website in the show notes. They can learn more about how you can support getting the book out of their head. Should have had that as part of your intro, and I apologize for the oversight. So, Bill, how would you define challenging now? Because you've gotten better at writing, it's happening faster, more disciplines. You're bringing on co-authors, which maybe that is the challenge. You have a very defined audience. Like, you're not scared to hit publish. Like, what's the challenge for book 1? I get it. There's a lot of unknowns, but you got to book 6. You now work with multiple co-authors. What would you say is the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge is deciding on what's next. I have so many books inside of me. In fact, I have one that keeps gurgling up, and I have so many projects on my plate. I told it, no, you cannot come out until August 1st, because I'm supposed to be finishing some projects today, which is not happening, but it's coming out. And knowing that I gave myself to August 1st, it's kind of quieted down, but now it wants to come out. And this particular book is different than any other book that I've written, in as far as the format and the type of book that it's going to be. And I'm excited by it. And I'd like to think that it's going to be like a compilation of all this knowledge that I've gathered over the years, and I can't wait to get it out in this different format. So that's what keeps me going. I love to be challenged. I love to bring value to my community or to the world. So it seems like these two have converged for that too. So I'm excited about that.
I want to caution those listening that right after someone publishes a book is not the time to ask what they're writing next. Give it a year. Wait till the book is a year old, and then you can ask that question. It's like a parent giving birth. You do not immediately say to that parent, when are you gonna have another kid? Like, that just isn't appropriate. Like, at least wait to the first birthday party. Jeff, I'm going to shift gears a little bit for you. I want to know if you were clear, because your book is about content marketing. How did you think about the strategy of the book feeding back into your business? So the book and your business goals, your business strategies, how much was that thought about before you decided to go ahead and write a book? You and I know each other through the National Speakers Association, and I'll blatantly say I started my first book as I need to have a book, not super strategically writing it. It was like, well, if you're a speaker, you have to have a book. How did you approach this?
That was definitely a piece of it, where I was wanting to speak more, and there's some thought that, oh, if you have a book, it's now become a requirement. Like if you're a speaker, oh, where's your book? But I liked writing and always did. So for me, that was not. I wasn't one going, oh God, I have to write a book. I was excited about it. I had written lots of fiction throughout my life, and the idea of a business book was appealing to me. But I had to make sure I had something worth sharing. And I think, in terms of, content, I talk about story driven content, and that's kind of slightly different from what other people talk about when they're talking about putting out content. And for me, the reason my book is different is because it's got a bunch of my stories in it. And that's what I think it's using narrative to communicate more effectively. That's part of my whole reason. In terms of connecting to my business, it's kind of been interesting because my business is evolving. And so quickly it was like, okay, I've been about story and content for most of my career in marketing, and I still am. I've added the layer of AI, and so now I'm obsessed with AI. And so a lot of what it's doing is about, okay, well, how does AI help with content marketing? But what's evolved is that people are just interested in AI more broadly, and so I'm giving presentations just on AI for business, which is some form of my next book will be about AI for business. And again, I'm like, well, I wrote a book in content marketing, and there's tons of those out there. So I'm not that. I just have to find what's my perspective going to be that's worthy of the time for someone to read it. In terms of strategy, there's one thing that shifted that emerged that I hadn't thought about. One of the thoughts was that, and this was, oh, if I have a book, then they're more likely to hire me. And then if I sell books, my goal would be to sell it at the conference, which happened. So, I went to a conference and they bought the book for everyone. And so therefore 400 copies of the book. And I was like, oh my God, this is good. Let's keep doing this. But as I'm reaching out to prospects, to event planners and things, so I've applied for a couple speaking gigs, and they're like, oh, we've just booked our people. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, they're like, get back in touch with us next year. I'm like, okay, well, in the meantime, would you like me to send a copy of my book? And I find that there's they're like, oh, a book, you're going to send me like your book. And I think there's a benefit in terms of nurturing that relationship with someone that you want to work with by sharing the book with them. And that, I think, has been, I just hadn't thought about it. I should have. But it's something that now I'm regularly operating on. Here's my little business card book.
I love this example. And someone once said to me, even if you don't know, if you haven't gotten a confirmation they want to receive it, like ideally they say, yes, send it to me. But even if you just figure out who to send it to, people don't throw away books. Like, not very easily. That book is going to sit on their desk for a while and remind them of you. And if the book title is enticing and the content seems interesting, they may even crack it open. And then that book might get passed around the office. And so it is true as part of prospecting. You also mentioned bulk book sales as a part of a speaking strategy. And I just think we have to remember that the way we really make money from books is bulk book sales, or it generates interest in our other offers. The one at a time book sales is not really the way anyone's going to make a ton of money. So I'm curious, Anna, if you also had like a clear delineation between, or clear line between the book and how it was going to benefit you. And I heard you mention earlier that you had these new clients coming to you with the book in hand. So clearly it was working, but was that something you realized was going to happen? You talked about your referral partners having something to hand off and all of that.
Yes, that when I wrote the book, that was pretty much what I was hoping for, is that it would help me get more clients, and also, yeah, definitely more speaking gigs, because, of course, conferences attract a certain kind of person where there's a lot of overlap with the book. So
yeah,
at this point, it's maybe not so much, but I'm still happy that it's out there. And yeah, I definitely am happy to have sleep as an area of expertise, because yeah, everybody needs to know more about it.
I love it. So in a moment, I'm going to be asking Bill for his best advice for folks who are writing a book that will help them grow their business. But first, we're going to have a quick word from our sponsor. Bill, what advice do you have for writers?
I think a couple of pieces of advice is first, if you own a business, I think you should definitely embrace the idea that a book can change your business. I think you should don't be afraid to invest in it, whether that's through education, coaches, partners, because it's been the best financial return on investment in my business. It's led to multiple six figures just in royalties. Plus, when you tie in, the next tip would be to tie a lead magnet into this with additional resources and capturing those email addresses. That's led to seven-figure course sales from one book. So this can be a game changer for your business. So it's worthy of the investment of your time, your energy, and your resources like cash to learn to do it right, to build a framework, build a book that's going to last and really help people.
Wow, I mean, you've gone well beyond people who just hit publish. Like, to hear your numbers and your effort like paying off like that. I mean, that we talk about metrics of success. I always say revenue is a measure of success that you can take to the bank. Like that, whatever way you get it, whether it's royalties, whether it's course sales after, or speaking opportunities, that totally changed the game. But also better media opportunities. Like, I landed an NPR interview because I had a TEDx and a book. And that was, it came out in 2020. And just this year, just this month, I talked to a global company about doing a virtual talk for them for an amount of money I would never have asked for like 5 years ago. And they're going to buy books. And it's like, that's because I have books to sell them, right? Like, none of that would have been possible. So both, I wouldn't have had the authority, the recognized expertise, or the possibility of selling that thing. So I really want to second what Bill was just saying.
Can I piggyback on that a little bit more too? Because that's what was really clear to me is I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning, right? Like, I'm trying to, even as you're talking, I'm trying to put myself back into that mindset of my first book. I could not see the future. All I did was create the book and get it out there. And I think that's really important. I love that you used birth, because earlier, it's like the analogy that's perfect for this. Once you birth the book, it can take a life of its own that you don't even have control of anymore. So there were opportunities that opened that I didn't even know was a possibility in that, like partnering with the largest organization in my industry. They read the book, they loved it, and they started selling it. And that doubled my sales over the years. So that was a huge opportunity, plus all the speaking and everything else that came working with them as well. So that's a huge opportunity that if I was to do all over again, I would be more strategic to think what organizations are in my industry that I could possibly partner with. Who else might have an audience that would buy my book?
Right. If those people were part of your launch team, they may or may not write a review, but that would engage them into a conversation that might have led to that kind of partnership.
Right.
Like, that kind of thing happens. Geoffrey, do you have one or two pieces of advice for the writer who's writing a business book? Geoffrey, if you wouldn't mind unmuting. Thank you.
I was thinking deeply about the answer, so I needed to give myself a moment. I'm going to give you two quick ones. One is whether writing a business book or not, embrace story. So especially in a business book, I think is where it's needed most because we're so used to seeing, whether it's tactical things, and if we can't apply it through some sort of narrative, you're losing an opportunity to really connect with your reader. That's my own bias. And the second thing is look for help. It's, I think there's an impression like, oh, you have to do it all on your own. And some people do, but the process becomes much more manageable to have people who know what they're doing help you do it. You will end up with a better process, a better book, a better results from the book, to use people like Robbie or people who can help you really make sure you're writing the best book you can write. And I think so, whether it's investing in an editor, investing in cover design, whatever it may be, all those things matter. And if you're not someone who has that particular skill, there's plenty of resources out there. Just be careful which ones you use, but they're out there. Find the right ones for you.
And I've helped out a little bit with that by gathering more than 50 experts in the BizBook Publishing Hub. If you go to bizbookpublishinghub.com, it's a free resource to find the experts who guide entrepreneurs through the complexities of writing, editing, publishing, and marketing a business book. Anna, what are your 1 or 2 pieces of advice for these writers?
Thank you. Yes. So there is definitely a lot of, shall we say, advice out there on the right or wrong way to write a business book. And the truth is that every one of my 20 plus books was written with a different method because I was a different person in a different place in my life. So just because somebody is selling a method, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for you. And if it doesn't mean that you're going to fail or be a bad writer. So I'd say figure out how you can work with your brain and within your life to write your book on your timeline. That is okay. And that is something that a lot of people do need to learn the hard way. And a lot of people give up because they don't. And then I would also echo the advice to not take shortcuts. If you are going to be, especially if you're going to be independently publishing your book, you need to go through the same process a publisher would, where that is developmental editing, line editing, copy editing, cover design, blurb writing. And so, yes, it's definitely a good idea to get help and to find somebody who has been through that process who can give you advice, or even better, hire somebody.
Speaking of finding people, how can listeners find you, Anna, and follow your work?
Well, you can find me on the BizBook Publishing Hub if you're interested in my writing coaching services. If you're interested in Better Sleep for the Overachiever, it is available pretty much everywhere. My practice website, I am based in Atlanta, but my colleagues and I are SciPact providers, so we can treat insomnia patients all over the country in most states. That's sleepyintheatl.com, and that will be in the show notes. Then if you're interested in my fiction, if you want to read a little steampunk or urban fantasy to escape from this very chaotic time we're in, you can find me at ceciliadominic.com.
We will put all those links in the show notes at bizbookpublishinghub.com. Bill, where can people find you and follow your work?
Yeah, thank you very much. This has been a great conversation. Thanks, Robbie. Anybody who wants to check out my books, my courses, just contact me. Just go to notarycoach.com.
Fantastic. And Geoffrey?
The book is at thecontentbeast.co. I joke that it isn't .com because the beast got hungry and ate the M. So thecontentbeast.co. GG Klein is kind of my speaking site, and 9dotsmedia.com is my other life. And I'm on LinkedIn and all the normal platforms.
We're going to put your LinkedIn's, your book links, all those things are going to be at bizbookpublishinghub.com. Thank you all for this great conversation. Truly appreciate it.